Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another RedShort webinar. Today, we're going to be discussing the B1txor20 Botnet. I just want to mention that if you're looking for the written report that goes along with this presentation, there's a link on the slide there. We'll have the written report posted up there later on in the week. Let's go ahead and jump in and get started here. The B1txor20 malware was first announced on March 15th of this year by NetLab 360, which is a research lab owned by Chinese cybersecurity company Qihu. It targets servers running the Linux operating system, both the ARM architecture and the x86-64 architecture. This is notable because there has been a big push from cloud computing provider Amazon Web Services for customers to migrate their servers to AWS's ARM-based Graviton 2 hardware. Supporting the ARM architecture also opens up infection to IoT devices, such as smart TVs and consumer routers. The malware initially gains access remotely through a dropper that exploits vulnerabilities in the Log4j application. The Log4j vulnerabilities were discovered fairly recently, December of last year, and caused quite a commotion in the IT community due to the widespread nature of the vulnerabilities. Also easy to exploit, and it's easy to hide the attack using legitimate encrypted communications channels like TLS. And despite a large amount of media coverage and a big push from IT teams to patch against the vulnerabilities, CISA reports there are still hundreds of vulnerable applications without a fix available even today. However, the number of vulnerable servers around the world is unknown. So that means there is a potential for this botnet to spread. B1txor20 uses the DNS protocol to communicate with its command and control, or C2 infrastructure. The domain of the command and control server is doubly encrypted using the XOR and RC4 encryption algorithms. However, because there's a distinct lack of code obfuscation, and also the sample binaries that have been analyzed have been dynamically linked at compile time, that makes this malware easy to reverse engineer to recover that 20-byte encryption key. Also, responses from the C2 server are encrypted using RC4. So this is kind of a lucky break for malware researchers, this lack of code obfuscation and dynamically linked compilation, making it easy to reverse engineer. The original NetLab report also noted observing buggy code, and all three of these things combined indicates that this could be a development version or a test version of this malware botnet. B1txor20 has several remote access capabilities, and it also attempts to hide itself using some rootkit capabilities. For remote access, it can provide an interactive shell for the attacker to either connect to, or a reverse shell that will connect back to the attacker from the compromised host. And this will allow the attacker to run system commands interactively. The malware can also receive individual commands from the C2 server to do individual actions like upload or download a file, read or write an existing file on the system, start or stop a proxy service, which would allow an attacker to route their network traffic through the compromised system. Or if the system is attached to two networks, for instance, a customer-facing public network segment and also a private corporate network segment, the malware can perform network traffic forwarding, and this will allow the attacker to communicate through the compromised host with the internal private network as if they were attached directly to that internal private network. Ultimately, it seems like this malware is designed to provide a platform for reconnaissance and for attacking other remote systems across the internet, and moving laterally on internal networks that the infected hosts are attached to, and also stealing information. So because of the small sample size, there's not a lot of information published about this botnet yet, especially on targeting. So if we look at VirusTotal, we found 3 unique samples of this malware, all of which were included in the original NetLab report, which means it's not widespread yet and not being found en masse in the wild. The small sample size could also support the hypothesis that this malware is a development or test version. Looking a little bit more at targeting, as we said, the malware specifically targets Linux machines. In the observed samples, the dropper exploited the log4j vulnerabilities, which log4j is widely deployed on cloud servers worldwide. And as we said earlier, vulnerable servers are still out there. The fact that the Linux ARM architecture is supported means that attackers are expecting to have deployment on ARM devices, which could include IoT devices such as IP cameras, consumer Wi-Fi, and internet routers, and maybe even smart TVs. Also included are ARM-based cloud servers, as we mentioned, the AWS Graviton 2 hardware. And these larger classes of servers are the ones that would be running log4j. However, if the author decides to change the initial infection vector from a log4j exploit to something else, there's no reason this malware could not run on smaller IoT devices. So we talked a little bit about the DNS protocol as a communications channel for C2. So how does this work? Well, normally DNS provides a solution for the internet like a telephone book. When you want to visit a website, you ask a DNS server for the number of the website, which is their IP address. For example, if you wanted to visit google.com, your computer would send a request to the DNS server, ask for the number for google.com, and the DNS server would respond with the appropriate IP address. Since data is exchanged, attackers can use this protocol to send messages back and forth. So the way this works is the malware will craft a special DNS request and encode some information inside of the request. The attacker-controlled DNS server receives the request, decodes the message, processes it, and sends a response back encoded in a DNS response. In this high-level example on the slide, the malware checks in with the attacker's DNS server and asks if there are any tasks it should perform, and the DNS server responds with a system command that the attacker has chosen for the malware to perform, in this case, delete all files on the infected device. So looking at the malware infrastructure, we see the recent B1txor20 activity on this domain, webserve.systems, which is the C2 domain published in the NetLab report. We see activity not only on the IP address that was published in the report, but a historical IP address that was associated with TrickBot, Cobalt Strike beacons, Bazaar backdoor, and APTQ12. TrickBot, also known as TrickLoader and Trickster, is a banking malware focused on stealing banking credentials. However, it's very modular and has been extended with all kinds of capabilities over the years. Bazaar backdoor is a newer malware also operated by the TrickBot group. It was also under development and operated by the Conti ransomware group. Bazaar backdoor is also a remote access toolkit like B1txor20 and has been used for remote access and lateral movement inside a target network. And APTQ12 is an APT group known for conducting industrial espionage. So you can kind of see how the group and the capabilities provided by these tools kind of all fit together. In conclusion, I think what we can draw from this analysis is that B1txor20 is a capable remote access toolkit with rootkit capabilities and a stealthy command and control communication structure. design is a reconnaissance and attack platform and can be deployed to compromised Linux machines. So far, evidence suggests it's delivered via log4j exploits, but this could change. Software is lacking several capabilities, such as code obfuscation and polymorphism, which are common in production malware that we see. This leads us to believe this malware is either a development version or in a testing stage, and could evolve in the future to have those capabilities and others. The set of payloads seems to be extensible, although not without replacing the compiled binary with a new version. However, we could expect to see additional capabilities such as ransomware capabilities or DDoS capabilities in the future. The malware also seems to share infrastructure utilized by TrickBot, Conti, and APTQ12, which could mean the malware is either a development effort of one of those groups. In contrast, if this is a work of a new group, they could be purchasing access to delivery infrastructure from another cybercrime group. And that's all I have for today. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the material and found it useful. If you missed any of our previous Red Short webinars, you can find them at redskyalliance.org/redshorts. If you're not yet a member, you'll need to sign up, but the membership is free and will give you access to all types of Red Sky Alliance content. Please join us again next week for another Red Short, and have a great day.